All right. Well, hello everyone. Great to see so many familiar faces from around the globe. A few of you I saw at GreenBiz a few weeks ago in Arizona, which was an incredible event. Gave us lots of energy and lots of things to think about. Happy March to all of you all, wherever you are in the world. This is our sixth Impact Leaders Lab today. Some of you already know a little bit about it, but I'll just give you a bit of an intro. This is a private community for you as a select group of sustainability professionals to help you really accelerate your professional development and solve problems and come up with creative solutions with your peers. Today, we're really going to be focused on those first 90 days of a new CSO role, which I think also can apply to any level. It's not just CSO, but what do you have to think about in those first 90 days as a new practitioner coming into a new organization? So for those of you that don't know me yet, I am Shannon Howd, and I get the right people into the right jobs to advance careers for a more sustainable world. So I really try to connect people to their wider purpose in achieving our joint sustainable development goals. Some clients have called me a career magician. Others have said I'm a transformational life coach. Recently, I was called a conscious connector, but I really see myself as a career journey partner. So wherever you are on your path, I slot in and support you, challenge you, and help you overcome the bumps and the barriers to progress for yourself and then also for your organizations. I'm an ICF certified coach, and I've worked 25 plus years now in recruitment. I've supported and challenged more than 3,000 change leaders to excel into this next stage of their careers with impact. I would love to introduce Nira Johri, our speaker today. Nira brings a wealth of experience and insight as the newly appointed CSO at KFC, which she just informed me is the fastest growing retail brand in the world in 2021, 2022, and 2023. I'll let her speak a little more to that. She has a career that spanned more than 2 decades and has led transformational global strategies and dedicated over 10 years to advancing the value that big food companies can generate through a sustainability lens. Previously, she was Vice President of Global Inclusion and Rich Products Corporation and Senior Director of Sustainability Strategy and Learning at the World Cocoa Foundation. Having started her career in the Department of Defense and on the Obama campaign. My dad actually worked at the Department of Defense for 40 years, so I know it well. So welcome, Nira. Thank you so much for making time for us today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Shannon. Thanks so much for having me.
Great. So I'd love just to dive in to when you came into this new role, stepping into the C-suite, and wanted to understand, were you stepping into someone else's shoes, or was this a new role? Did you have a team, a budget? What was that kind of initial landscape that you were stepping into?
Yeah, so I'm KFC's first ever Global Chief Sustainability Officer, which is really exciting. It's always intimidating to be the first of anything in an organization, but also a tremendous opportunity, I think, to your quote perspective, right, of where we can take all of this over time. There is a team, and it's a pretty incredible setup. I'll tell you just a little bit about the construct of KFC, because I think that matters for this discussion. So KFC is owned by Yum Brands, who also owns Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, and Habit Burger. So we are one of 4 brands within Yum. We are the largest brand. We make up about 50% of the restaurants and about 50% of the sales of the organization. We are 30,000 restaurants as of last month, which is a massive, massive footprint, physically, mentally, and then how we interact in the world. And I think if you're US based, you will often think about us competing with a Chick-fil-A or a Popeyes, but globally, we actually compete with all of the major quick service restaurant brands like McDonald's, Burger King, and others. So we're really in this, I think, with the US lens, KFC sometimes ends up feeling smaller versus globally, our footprint is quite large and impactful. And Shannon, to your question about the team and the budget, all of those existed for sure. I think one thing that I was really brought in to do is to galvanize this as a topic that is a priority for the organization, and also to align all of the different resources around the world and to move in one direction together. When you're a global organization, where each of your markets will vary widely, and trying to really come up with a global agenda that can have then local execution.
Wow. Yeah, fantastic. So this is not only a new job for you, but a new role in the organization. So there's even other layers probably of challenge as you've come in. So I usually, when I do my onboarding coaching, which is like the first 90 days in a role, I always encourage and we facilitate doing what's called a listening tour. And this is something that actually Tim Moheen, who used to be the CEO of GRI, came up with when he started into his C-suite role. And I loved it because he said, look, for 90 days, all I'm going to do is listen. I'm not going to try to rebuild a strategy. I'm not going to try to get more funding. I'm not going to try to, get people to do anything. I'm just going to listen. So I'd love just to hear your thoughts on that. And if you did something like that, how would you break it down and prioritize who you were listening to and how you were listening? I just think it's one of those inevitable things we have to do, but there's different people have different strategies for it. Love to hear yours.
Yeah, I think that it's such wise advice to say, begin with listening. We have 2 ears versus 1 mouth for a reason. And I think the listening tour is a priority for any new leader in any role, but particularly in sustainability. I think we all know when you work in the sustainability space, how connected we are to almost every function in the business. And I think the reality is they don't always know that. So it's really important for you to learn the business strategy. So that was, I think, one of my biggest priorities is understand the context of what matters to the business. I looked at it from where are we today? What are the growth plans? How does innovation happen? But I think the other thing I was really looking to understand is culture cues, but also how does change happen, right? I think we are primary leaders of change. We are the change agent in chief more than anything in an organization. And I think to understand how that comes together in each organization is going to be different, right? You'll have organizations that are hierarchical. The Department of Defense is a great, like, it's a ladder up, you run it up the chain, you don't go in any other direction. YUM and KFC end up being highly matrix and highly relational. So it's really about individuals. We often talk about knowledge that exists within the organization versus process that is laid out or well mapped. And so I think understanding all of that context was really, really critical for me. And I also wanted to understand the differences of where the business was geographically. We have 14 business units. And then the piece I didn't mention in the structure is we are 98% franchisee owned. So our business units then are the ones that interact and influence our franchisees, and they obviously have a wide set of priorities for that group of stakeholders as well. So understanding the complexities and the nuances of different regions was also really, really important.
So how did you do that? Just give us a little how-to on, you get to the office on day one. How do you start to unpack all that?
Well, I think Yum did set me up for success in that Yum and KFC in terms of the meet and greet list was quite long. And, I remember in the early days feeling like, I think I should be doing some work. Like I'm just having lots of meetings with people and meeting and greeting. But so much of that was to set me up for success, to know the people to call, to have established a connection. I was also really lucky to be able to get to about a third of our business units last year through travel. I think Zoom and Teams go a really, really long way today in building those connections, but there is no replacement for breaking bread together. You learn a person, you learn what matters to them behind the scenes, you learn about their families or their lives or their hobbies, which create points of connection, which are going to become really, really important. We are often making unlimited asks of these people, right? You're often operating on your capital and when you're making an ask and what you're asking them to do, and having a baseline of a relationship helps, right? Rather than going in cold to a person you've never met before and saying, I need you to do this really huge thing for me. So for me, it was a priority also to spend time with the markets. And I try to cut across teams when I visit a market, and also in those Zoom calls or team calls, to just say, I need to talk to multiple functions, multiple departments. And you're often, again, in that listen mode because they may not know that you need them. And so you're trying to figure out those connects and those intersection points to what matters to them, so that down the line you can say, I remember you were talking about this work that we're doing on transformation that relates to efficiency around energy. Let me tell you a little bit more about how we can work together on that. But you have to be open and listen and explore with them to get there.
Mm-hmm. And how do you track all of that? Because I have a stakeholder profiling tool that I use with clients, but I'm just wondering, that's a lot of different people and lots of different places and lots of different levels. And how do you prioritize them and just keep track, right, of who's, got the dog named Daisy and whose, favorite ice cream is chocolate or whatever the personal stuff is, and then those professional priorities.
Yeah, I wish I had something as sophisticated as a stakeholder tracking tool. I have a OneNote notebook that is divided with thousands of folders. And it's kind of how I keep track of functionally a conversation or geographically a conversation. So my system is, again, kind of the structure that I mentioned, the teams that I need to connect with and the places that I want to be connecting with. I also did some of that from where is the bulk of the business, right? Who are our most important markets? Who do I need to spend time with first? I do believe in these roles, it's really easy to spread yourself too thin, and to when you're trying to be everything to everyone, you're basically nothing to no one, right? And so I think it's really, really important to say, we even redid the exercise going into our 2024 planning, which are the 5 markets that need us most. And that list actually looks different than the list of our biggest businesses, because in some of those markets, they're doing really well and they don't need us. And in some of the markets, they need greater support from the central global team. So we've redone that exercise of prioritization also as we learn more. And I have a pretty terrible memory, so I try to capture things written down. And then I think at a certain point, you get to enough, you've heard something enough times that you don't have to write it down anymore. So I try to go back through my notes and say, okay, I remember 6 months ago, we talked about this. What was the context of that? And is it still relevant today?
Really interesting about the prioritization there, in terms of not just thinking about who are your biggest markets or who are the most important revenue generators, but who needs that global sustainability team support to get to that next stage of impact. So, and that, as you said, can change every year, right? And so it's kind of needing to do that almost on an ongoing annual basis. So when you came into the role, Nira, what you might have more or fewer, but what were your kind of top 4 to 5 big challenges that you saw? Okay, these are going to be the biggies for the next kind of 3 to 6 months that I need to really make sure I sink into and prioritize, or any number of challenges that you saw.
Yeah, I think the resilience is a great starting point for the conversation, right? Is all these jobs require constant refresh and resilience. I think the biggest challenge is to never do these jobs from a point of frustration, and it's you can get beaten down over time. So to constantly bring yourself up to optimism and energy, it requires us as those leaders to show that face, but also to feel that way and to come at the work from that. But I think the challenges for me were probably no different than what many of us are facing in sustainability. I would say first, goal clarity and goal proliferation is a challenge in every organization today. And there's a reason goals are set. There's a reason we have ambition across many, many things. But I think when you look back towards the business strategy, the financial side of the business is really good at anchoring around a few key financial metrics. And I think in sustainability, we say, okay, we've got really long horizons, multiple issue areas that we must tackle. Some are emergent risk, some are long-term management of issues. And that means the list of things we're trying to accomplish is really, really long. And that ends up being really overwhelming for other functions or teams that aren't in your day-to-day with you. So I think one of the biggest things that I was facing when I came in and that we worked really hard on last year was clarity of goals, focus, and prioritization. Also helping the business understand phasing of like, this is we must get after this right now. And this is something that I'm going to talk to you about in 2 to 3 years. It's not going away, but let's put it on the back burner. Especially as a public company, we're operating often quarter by quarter, month on month, week on week, right? Those financials are coming in. So you have to contextualize sustainability goals in the same frames that the business connects to. I think also there's always going to be bringing people on the journey of awareness and education of what some of these things mean. We, as sustainability content experts, often go into a language or vernacular that doesn't resonate in the business. They're words they've never heard before. They don't know what they mean. Even your most educated partners sometimes don't have the depth of knowledge that you or a person on your team will. And I'm really conscious of not dumbing any of this down. This isn't to say simplify it or greenwash it, but you do have to speak to people in a place, right? There's a lot of like communication coaching that says like, bring it down to an 8th grade reading level, right? You have to speak in a way that is easy for people to pick up, easy for people to parrot and echo and reinforce what you have said. So I think that education and awareness will be something we continue to do for a long time, but remains one of our biggest hurdles of how to help people be on the journey with us, internally and then externally. I think data is probably one of our biggest mountains to climb. Shannon, you and I were talking a little bit about this, but in a business where we have a parent company, we have us, we have business units, and then we have franchisees, we are not really the owners of the data. And even in organizations when you're have full operational control, you might not be the owners of the data. So trying to get to places where we've been really focused in the past year on, can we increase the volume of data that we're getting back from the system? How do we also ensure it's really accurate? But I say accurate with an asterisk because I think we become obsessed with perfect data. And in that, we're sacrificing insight that can come from imperfect data. So I always say directionally good is good enough. And I'm excited. I don't want to say that AI is the answer to everything, but I think we're going to be able to start using and leveraging technology in a way that helps us pick up patterns and insights from good enough data without needing that perfect data. But I would say those are kind of the three big areas that I was looking at challenges, and still we're going to be working through all of that, I think, continually as we go on.
Yeah, it sounds like those three kind of the goals, the focus prioritization, the language semantics, education and awareness, and then the data capture. Those are ongoing challenges, aren't they? Those are kind of the universal cyclical challenges that we all have as leaders in this space. In terms of kind of your first 90 days, tell us a little bit about what you needed to do to get your leadership agreeing on scope and ambitions, and how did you get them to align and buy in? Because that is, as you said, that's kind of the first thing you need to do in order to set the tone for everything else. So walk us through, if you don't mind, just a little bit on how you went about that.
Yeah, and I would say I was really lucky. I think the demand signal for my role to be added to KFC came from our CEO and our CMO. And so it was, I think, a direct response to saying we need a senior leader in this space that can help us clarify, prioritize, and then accelerate action against this. So I think for me, it was an open door. That was something, I tested a lot for that. I think that you can't do these jobs, especially the senior level anymore, without senior level support. To be frank, I'm not interested in working for organizations where there isn't executive buy-in. The job is hard enough.
Yeah.
If you have to spend the time convincing your executives to be with you. So I was really fortunate to come into an environment where that demand signal was loud and clear. It had been prioritized from a business priority perspective, and strong support all the way up through even the way we talk about this from a young parent company perspective. Our strategy is the recipe for good growth. It's interlinked. Good and growth, they're never separated for us. And so I think all of that goes a long way to show you that the leadership is with you. Their ask, I think, in the early days, and I continue to see this in our businesses, I rarely meet with somebody who says, I don't believe in what you're doing, or I don't believe you matter, or the work that you're doing is important. The second half of that sentence is usually, we've got a lot going on. How do we figure out how to make this work amidst all of the other priorities that we have in the business, many of which are, we work in food, right? The cost of inflation, labor challenges, supply chain assurance, all are very, very real topics for the business day in and day out. And so I think one of the things that we've really worked to do to get continued reinforcement from our leaders is to say, okay, let's talk about how this actually intersects with each of those areas. And what I've also been coaching the business on is sometimes sustainability can feel like a thing that people don't know how to do, right? Again, that terminology or this new space. And so I really try to anchor to say, look, you actually already know how to buy commodities or buy ingredients for the business. Let's talk about the lens that we want to put on how we evolve, how we buy an ingredient. We know how to operate and run a restaurant, right? Let's talk about how we're going to bring this into how we maximize and optimize for our planetary impact as we run a restaurant. So it's anchoring back to the things that they know that are familiar, that help a leader then embrace this in a way that's different when you make it separate or distinctive.
I like that. It's always bringing it back to the core business and what they already know how to do well, and building on that, or mimicking, mirroring that with a sustainability lens in some ways. Yeah. So it sounds like you don't have the challenge that many other practitioners might have, which is senior level buy-in and kind of converting the non-believers across an organization. Are there any people or entities across your organization that you felt you did need to kind of help bring them along on this journey, help them to prioritize this? And ways that you did that? I think, did you talk about stowaways and pirates? Was that your language? Yeah. Tell me a bit about that.
I think it's the McKinsey terminology. I don't want to take credit where I didn't come up with it, but it is, I think, I love the conceptual. So for those who don't know the framing, it's about like people on a ship, right? And you have your captains, you have the people who are following you. I think they're called the shipmates maybe. And then you have your stowaways who are agnostic, indifferent. And those people can be even more dangerous than the pirates, the ones who are actively fighting you, right? Like, I love partnering with pirates because I think the pirates, they're rarely saying no to you because they're a bad human or because they dislike your agenda. There is usually something getting in the way for them, a barrier that you have to deconstruct. And I love to always, again, go back to it's rarely about you. Like, it's not about me. It's not about my agenda that they're saying no to, right? There is some other force that is causing resistance, whether it's cost, time, too many other priorities that they have to meet, right? They're struggling with managing a team that may not be getting the results they're seeking for. So I think deconstructing the barriers that a pirate is facing is really, really powerful, and trying to identify where you can meet them where they are and help alleviate or support the things that they're struggling with. The stowaways end up being the people that are hardest to convince, right? Because they are agnostic or they're indifferent. They may not see the connection. And I think that anchoring is similar to the pirate strategy, which is what's in it for them. Why should they care? What compels them to act? And no group in an organization is a monolith, right? So sometimes I think that that's the depth of this challenge as we think about awareness, education, advocacy is you need differentiated strategies to reach all of those people. And along with all of the day-to-day execution that you're trying to accomplish, it's a lot to reach all those multiple audiences in different ways. So I think that Shannon just goes back to prioritization of where are the teams that you have to do the most work, who's most instrumental that you have to unlock, are the individual personalities with you, against you, or not engaged at all, right? And then breaking that down. But I think also what has helped me in those conversations is one, simplify, right? I think help again narrow this to a simple set of things that you can leave a person with that they can remember when you walk away. I'll give you just an example at Yum and at KFC. We talk about red strategies. So relevant, easy, distinctive. That's how we talk about our brand. That's what we always want to be. And I just came out of 2 days with our teams that lead development. So building strategy, where we grow, how we set up restaurants. And we've been talking about red and green, right? It's a really strong color cue. It reminds you of Christmas, right? So we're anchoring again to a thing that everybody in the business knows, which is the red piece. And we say, when you build new restaurants, you want to be red and green. So thinking about those simplifications, right? Again, there's a lot of detail behind what building green means, but it gives them a way to connect and remember. And then I think also, I always say to my team, repetition is good leadership. We think we've told a person a thing, and then you say, okay, I hit them once, I'm going to move on to the next level of the strategy. And you really have to hit them over and over and over again. It's always good to have a steady walk around deck that you use for a long period of time with multiple audiences to reinforce that simplified message, because people have a very large volume of things on their plate, and their ability to remember your piece of the pie is challenging.
I love that, the simplification and also like kind of something that's memorable, like the red and green. It just, like a mantra or a framing like that, and to repeat. So we as humans, we forget more easily than we're going to absorb it, right? And so, it's like learning a language or anything or a new habit. It's that repetition. So that's a really good point, that don't think you're done and move on to the next audience or the next person that you need to influence, but keep repeating those messages. And then they'll start to sink in and become part of them. I think I would love to open up at this point to questions. I'm just conscious of time, and see if anybody else has some specifics about the first 90 days and any questions about the first 90 days. So let's see, we've got, I think Heather, let's go with Heather Lubner. Do you want to start off? Hello. Good to see you again after Green Biz.
Nice to see you again. Thank you so much, Nira, for your comments. They're really terrific. I just wondered, you hit on this idea of barriers and also of prioritization. So when you repeatedly get that, we don't have the time, the financial resources, we're working on our operational priorities or whatever that team's priorities are, how do you reprioritize sustainability as one of the top agendas, and how do you eliminate some of those barriers like time, financial, in another function like ops or purchasing?
Yeah, I'll give you maybe some of the things that, so I would say that when I was at Rich Products, we were at a really, really different place, right? Sustainability didn't exist as a function. I was brought in to really help. We were feeling rapid customer demand and didn't have a path, a plan, right? So the journey there was quite different than what it has been at KFC. But I think there is no better tool than persistence. And that helps beat down the resistance, right? And I think one of the things is, it's again that just, it took, I would say, almost 2 to 3 years to get people to say, okay, I believe this is a connected strategy to supply chain and procurement, right? Like they understood there was an implication, but they couldn't really see the path of how it all came together. And for me, it was about really, really embedding the resources. When we got, we did all of the traditional things, right? We built out the materiality. We said, these are the goals. We said, this is how we achieve that, and the gap. And we looked at the gap, not only of the current state of where we were on the issues, but also the resourcing required to get there, right? You can't have an ambition without anybody serving it, right? That's the reality of what gets, managed and measured is the thing that you then help start to put resources against. So it took time, but again, it came down to a few leaders who advocated for us, and that was also education, building capacity with the leader to go to bat for the resources. That took about a year. It does take time. And then I think also, I'm a big fan of, I don't need a big central team. I like to embed in the functional spaces that we want these team members to be in, because they are then going to have much greater access and insight of what their peers in that function are going to do. So I could have a responsible sourcing person on my central team, but if I embed them in my supply chain or procurement team, they're going to be able to go much further, much faster. They're speaking the language day in and day out. They still are well connected to the central sustainability team, but their ability to achieve there is faster. We're also starting to look at innovative financial models. There's lots of good examples of how people are doing this out there, but we, and in the Yum structure, use a variety of different current models. We have different fee structures and incentive structures in the business that are naturally set up for franchisees. So we leverage some of those. We're also looking at opportunities where we could mirror, we on our social purpose work have a centralized fund that markets can apply for. And the goal is to say, I have an initiative that I would like to run. I need some seed funding to get this off the ground. But part of the pitch that they have to present is what is the transition model over 2 to 3 years where they will become self-sufficient. So we're looking at models like that we can expand into not only the people side, but the planet side. And then the other piece that I have really become vocal about in the past year is I think it's really unfair that sustainability is the only function in the business that doesn't get runway. So we're asked to do this work for free. Nobody wants to give us investment dollars and give us space for return, right? So I think the reality is, why are we any different than any other function of the business? If I said to you, you have to launch a new product, you have no R&D money, you can't test with consumers or focus groups, you have no marketing budget, and you can't measure progress, good luck, launch the new product, you wouldn't be successful, right? It's not fair for us to be in that position to say, you must do something different that requires more resources, and you get nothing to make that happen. So to again bring it back to that business financial lens of like, there is an investment required. This is the payback that will occur. This is the time frame in which you can expect a return. And here's how we're going to measure financially and from a people and planet perspective the progress along the way. To give it that rigor, I think then helps build confidence that it's thoughtful and we're not just saying, we have to reach these really big, hairy, audacious goals, and I just need lots of money to make it happen, and it may or may not net out, right?
You hit on all of the items I was wondering about. Thank you. Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you. Great question and answers, of course. Let's go over to Courtney. Courtney, you had a question about the structure of the team and also some of the key issues that are top of mind right now for the organization. You want to turn it over to you?
Hi, thank you so much. This has been fantastic, and it's wonderful to be back in this group. I had a question, about the ESG and where does sustainability fit in a broader, if at all, in a broader ESG framework? Because I feel like sustainability has kind of been moving along, and the sort of social and the governance, et cetera, or the E has been moving on. But anyway, I'm just wondering if that's part of a bigger umbrella or if it's totally separate.
Yeah, and Courtney, I can tell you a little bit about what it looks like at Yum and KFC, and obviously it varies across organizations. But for us, Yum really covers the high level ESG. So we've got really, really strong governance, both at the board level for Yum, and then our nominating and governance committee is the one that does the day-to-day management of ESG. We report to them quarterly. They now have a scorecard where we track progress at the brand level and at the parent company level. And Yum sustainability reports into our chief legal officer. And then for KFC, I report to our chief marketing officer. And I think people love this age-old question of like, where should you report? Which department is it most important? Is it better if it's the CEO or not? I think this all goes back to like supportive leaders. Are those people your captains and your shipmates, right? Like, are they the people that are helping you along the way? I am really agnostic on it because I think so much of the job is influencing. If you have the right people and champions above you and around you, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. I've seen it in all different iterations, reporting to supply chain, reporting to marketing, reporting to legal. There's cases for each of those in my mind, but you have to be able to navigate and get those people to advocate for you when the moments come. And then we also do a ton of, I would say, informal governance. We have a steering committee, which includes members of our global leadership team, We have regional steering committees, which are cross-functional and anchoring all the departments that work on this together. And then we've also started just some organic, we use a lot of WhatsApp. We're a very global organization. So we've also just started like a sustainability squad WhatsApp for some of the day-to-day soldiers that are doing the hard work. Maybe they're not at a leadership level, maybe they're not on a leadership team. Oops, I just lost that. But they are also really, really important to keep engaged and energized. And so we do a lot of just informal touch bases with them, keeping them updated on what's going on and giving them just inspiration on a day-to-day basis. So I think governance can be very, very formal, the highest board levels, and then really, really organic at the WhatsApp day-to-day chit chat.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Great. Yeah, interesting that you report into marketing, because I do think that is a question we all always do ask. So that's quite interesting. I was wondering, maybe we should go over to Meg's question now then, which is a little bit about leveraging sustainability into the brand messaging. Meg, are you there? You want to ask your question?
Yeah, sure. Hi, it's kind of a two-parter. And the first part is, do you engage with your marketing and creative agencies? And then also, do you have any like key advice that you would give them to begin introducing sustainability into brand meaning?
Yeah. So yes. So I think, and Shannon, to also touch on the piece before Meg's question is, for us, marketing is a really powerful department, right? We're a consumer-facing brand that is really marketing-led in many ways. And so for us, it's a great thing to be in marketing, right? It's a really, really important function for KFC. So for me, and the way that comes to life then, Meg, related to your question, is we anchor it to our brand strategy. So it's part of KFC's growth strategy, our growth compass. We say it's a key way that we build the brand, but we also know the unlock for gaining new consumers, particularly in the next generation of consumers, is around building brand trust and reinforcing signals of modernity and relevance. So that's, for us, how we begin the journey. We do work with some of the same agencies that are working with our external facing consumer messaging. I think one thing that we've been trying to navigate is QSR can be a complicated space to do this messaging. We want to be really, really authentic to who we are, which is we deliver and serve some of the best fried chicken in the world, right? But that is what it is. And so I think we want to live in the space that is right and authentic for who we are. And I think the other challenge we've really been trying to navigate on consumer messaging is it can sometimes come out in the form of legalese or sound really unlike KFC. So when you look at our advertising or our YouTube videos or our social media channels, they have a tone that's incredible and really pithy and fun and connects with consumers in where they are, right? And then we try to do sustainability messaging, and you're talking about, material regulations, and it's these things that just like really disconnect and frankly don't engage anybody, right? So we're trying to find the bridge between those two spaces, is how do we stay authentic and honest to who we are as a brand and our tone? How do we be sure and honest and clear in the messaging that we're providing and align with compliance, regulation, guidelines that are being more regulated around the messaging for this? But most importantly, show consumers how the work that we are doing, the progress that we have made, and also then to be very transparent about the work that needs to be done, right? We in no way are going to claim victory and say we've achieved all the things that we want to achieve. There's a lot of work left to be done, but there is good work underway. We've put together this year a galvanizing sort of call internally, which is make good visible. And we talk about that both internally and externally. And then we're also thinking about that from channel is the wrong word, but all of the places that can come to life. So we think about it from we own assets in terms of packaging or our restaurants. Those are great places for us to think about the messaging. And that's can be working with an advertising or marketing agency, but we've got enough creative internally also to come up with some of the simple ways to do that. And then we're also looking at how do we know, particularly the next generation of consumers is looking for validation of information. They want to make sure that what you're saying is true. So for us, that means us putting it out there on our own channels, but then also reinforcing it through other validators, whether that's news articles, whether that's social media, whether that's influencers. So we're starting to dig into what that looks like. And then we have a really large effort underway on internal engagement. And again, though we have governance structures, though we are talking about this as a priority, reaching at the end of the day, KFC technically means 1 million people. If you think about all of the team members in our stores, all of the employees in our offices, right? It's a massive number of people to reach. And we prioritize those audiences, but to start to think about how to do that communication internally as well. So I would break it out into sort of thinking internal, external, and find some of the spaces and places that you can own and naturally build to start with.
Fascinating. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And just trying to keep us on theme for the GreenBiz article, I'm wondering if you could just close out with us today, Nira, with your kind of top piece of advice to anyone really starting a new job in a senior level role within sustainability. What would you make sure that they do if they do nothing else? What would be some of those tips?
Yeah, I think there's I would say maybe the way to think about it is like quiet the bias, and we're going to come into a role, and even when you're doing everything right, even when you're on that 90-day listening tour, you're a human. You're going to come in and say, this is weird, why was it done this way? Or to say, oh my God, I can't believe this, like this is a hot mess, like I can't believe this is how this is going. And I think what I had to overcome that was really important was you're new. My role, I'm the first. I'm trying really hard to make a good impression and show them that they made the right decision. I think we're all feeling that as you come into the role. And you also have to be really mindful to understand the history of why a thing exists, right? We're so keen to say, I'm gonna make it better, different, sharper, stronger. And I'm a big believer in honoring what has come before you and to understand why it was built in the way it was built. And that means sort of quieting your own bias against being too judgmental or being too critical of the things that you're hearing, and to say, okay, what is still really great, but maybe just needs a tweak? Why was that so hard to do in the past? Why hasn't the team of, it's a team of really incredible, hardworking, bright people. There's a reason it didn't move, and it's usually not about them again, right? So it's trying to figure out like what are those unlocks. So I would just say that's, I think, this big piece of advice is you will be eager to make impact. You will want to make your handprints shown quickly. You will want to change and evolve and accelerate, all those words we're always using for progress. But to just breathe in the moment of honoring kind of what came before you and seeing what good really exists that you can already leverage.
I love that. In fact, I do a lot of work around unconscious bias. And we probably come to the table with a lot of that unconscious bias, and it's all stemming from wanting to improve things, right? And having has good intention, but I think you're right, it can really get in the way. So I love that. Quiet your own bias. We might have to actually title the article that. I love it. So I'll circle back with you on that. Nira. So thank you so much for your time and insights today. It's been really so many nuggets that we could probably write 10 articles from, but thank you to everyone else as well for your participation, your amazing questions, amazing speakers like Nira who made time for us. Really appreciate it. And yeah, best of luck as you go into your next 90 days of this amazing opportunity that you're clearly shaping in a beautiful way. So thank you again.
Thanks, Shannon.